6 days before we start our great campaign to get attention across the board. And today we have Reverend Mary Hawk, GM extraordinaire, numerologist, and all around badass witch. And of course, we have the infamous and famous Reverend Don Lewis, who just finished up a great omnibus and is getting ready for that, only waiting for the cash to come from Kickstarter before he sends out some 70 of these books, I think. And so there we go. And we're always out there. Remember, if you want to go to the Parliament of World's Religion, contact us. We have a special code that could save you some money. So
Yes,
kind of
indeed.
GMLs that. But so yes, guys. So this is Tarot Thursday, and one of the things I wanted to point out. So before this show started, someone was asking me, does it matter how many different decks of cards that exist, or is it that you can use any cards that you want? Because people are starting to talk about the cards are getting more extreme, they're getting more interesting, they're getting more nichey. That they've moved out some real older tarot card readers. I know somebody, Maggie De La Lata, only uses Rider Waite. I said which one, and she looked at me like, "What do you mean by that?" And yes, Rider Waite. There's a lot of versions of it now,
Well, my,
and
my thing about Rider Waite is a lot of people who don't really know much about tarot think it's a very traditional tarot deck, and it's nothing of the sort. It is a huge departure from traditional tarot. It was revolutionary at the time. That's
Mhm.
why it became so popular.
and now it's a standard.
It's the standard, but it's not traditional. Something like the Marseille Tarot is traditional.
So that's a big thing, isn't it? So it became the standard in the 20th century. It is the
Yeah,
tradition of the 20th century.
but it's very
Hmm.
it's very strange to love this very revolutionary deck and then be objecting to other revolutionary decks.
And because of Kickstarter and other means, more decks come out on a regular basis. I looked at it before here, there are 14 different tarot decks available. Only about 7 of them are going to look like they're going to make their goal. Only 3 of them had made their goal out of the 14. So
Hmm.
it's getting tougher
Yeah,
to do it, but there's still like 14 different decks out there, and that's really radically changed.
yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and I want to see how you guys are doing. I'm gonna hand this over here a little bit to Don. There we go, and take myself out. And so the first question is, let's talk about that. How or is it okay to use all these different types of decks? I mean, what is it? What's fueling that? I mean, we're looking at a renaissance, aren't we?
I would say so. Mary, do you want to answer first or shall I?
Um, well, I'll answer first, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we are looking at a tarot renaissance. There are certainly hundreds, if not thousands, of decks available now. I think it's a good thing because um, the first time I was ever exposed to tarot in the 80s, there was really the Rider Waite you could find.
Mm.
And it was harder to find anything else. So certainly, if the Rider Waite doesn't really speak to you, or if you want something different, and I told my story about how the Infinite Tarot put my other decks in timeout, but I have read. Normally, when I am doing readings, I have several decks, and different decks work better on different types of questions. So I think having a wide variety of decks is a good thing if you like it. I have bought various decks because they called to me at different times. And I think learning to work with the symbology of more than one deck is very broadening.
I think that's a very good point that when you look at many different decks, you get new perspectives on the cards. And I think that is very broadening. I think it helps you to have a wider understanding and sometimes to think of aspects you would not otherwise have thought of. For me, I love variety. And when I was reading professionally on a regular basis, for long periods of time, I would keep multiple decks right on my reading table and let the person choose. And that was actually the beginning of the reading because I wouldn't tell them that each deck had a different meaning for me in terms of where the reading was likely to focus. And so it would be the very first part of the divination. But for me, I also love the artistic differences in the different decks, the different feeling they had. Um, Pretty much in anything I do, I like variety. I like difference. I like variation. Um, the idea of just using one deck forever would be terribly boring, in my opinion. Unless, like the Infinite Tarot, it was constantly expanding. That does make for a little bit of a difference.
It does. It does. And I'm enjoying working with the expansion decks with the Infinite Tarot.
Thank you.
I will say this for the Rider Waite as your first deck, there is all kinds of material available on it.
Mhm.
So just starting out, you will find a book you like
Yeah.
about the Rider Waite.
When I started reading, the decks that were commonly available were the Rider-Waite Smith, the Tarot of Thoth, and then there were a number of Rider-Waite knockoffs, for want of a better way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
The Morgan Greer, it wasn't exact, maybe knockoff isn't the right word, but it followed the symbolism so closely in some ways. But it was one
Right.
that I loved and still do. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. There were a variety of them you could have, but nothing like today. And one of the things people don't realize, part of what is fueling that expansion of different tarot decks is the European collector market. Because in Europe, tarot is still mostly used for game playing rather than for divination. And people collect it for the artistic variations. That's how you get things like the baseball tarot and the tarot of the gnomes and all kinds of other little weird variations. And you say, why would somebody have made this for a divination deck? And the answer is, well, they didn't necessarily. They made it for a collector market. But in this country, tarot is almost exclusively associated with divination. Um, and I think it's very interesting that most Americans who work with tarot don't realize that difference between here and Europe in how the cards are regarded. I think that the different artistic takes on tarot not only are valuable artistically, but in terms of divination, again, they do expand your understanding of the cards. And of course, I don't know how many Egyptian or Egyptian-like decks out there, some of which are
There's
really good, some of which are really not. Um, and of course, that proudest of all collector decks, the Miss Cleo Tarot, um, because that's a moment in cultural history, and actually a decent tarot. Um, and you know, we had things like the Daughters of the Moon Tarot. Excuse me. Tarot has been used as a way to examine many aspects of metaphysics. And I don't know that people realize that that's part of what happens with tarot. And, you know, in the Correllian tradition, we have a saying that Correllianism is a lens through which all things may be seen, but that's true of tarot too. You can look through tarot at any of a number of different subjects and learn more about it by applying the tarot principles. And a lot of these tarot decks actually do that. A lot of them work with specific spiritualities, which are perhaps brought into sharper focus by being viewed through tarot. And of course, one of the other things that's happened in the last 40 years is there's also been a great deal of effort to make tarot more inclusive and more reflective of the real world society, which I think is also very important.
Definitely. Excuse me. Yeah, I like the inclusive tarot decks.
Mhm.
And I'm now randomly reminded I have the Deviant Moon tarot deck, which is very gothic in its depiction. And I took it with me to read for a gothic friend of mine.
Mhm.
And I actually was too weird for her.
Well,
She
that's
could
an
not.
accomplishment.
It really, really was.
One of the decks I used to have, and I'm sure I've still got it somewhere, was the Arthurian tarot, which looked at Arthurian mythology through a tarot lens. There was the Tarot of the Ages, which I also used to call it the Tarot of the Naked People because they didn't believe in costuming, but that was another matter. But it had the different suits were swords were Viking, um, cups were Maya or Aztec, one or the other. It's been a long time. I think they were
Hmm.
meant to be Aztec, but they were Aztec-ish, and so forth through several different cultures. Coins, I believe, were Egypt,
Hmm.
and that was a very interesting deck.
That
Um,
is interesting.
so we have a question in the chat room that I think we might take a moment to do from Cares Marls, who asked if they will get their signing bonus this month.
Okay.
I'm assuming by this month we mean the last few days of January.
All right. Well, I have the Ace of Wands, wands relating frequently to our professions. I have the Nine of, excuse me, Pentacles, which is relating to money, and in this case is very favorable in this situation. And then lastly, we have the Six of Swords. So my reading is favorable for you to get your bonus this month.
And let me draw a
We'll
couple.
see,
I'm
see
sorry,
what
were you not
John
done?
gets.
Okay. So the first one I've drawn is the Two of Wands, which to me is new beginnings. And it is the beginning of a new year. So it might simply be that. With that, we're going to put the Four of Lamps, which in this case I will read as expectation of what is coming. And we're going to ask bluntly, is it coming before the end of January? Or is it coming within the next 30 days? Well, for January, I get the Two of Swords. And for the next 30 days, I get the Nine of Wands. And you can see just by looking at them which one is the more positive. So I'm actually inclined to say that I would look for this to come through really any day now. I mean, I hate to put such a fine point on it as to say before February 1st, but that is kind of the question, and the answer does appear to be yes. So I'm going to say that I would expect it before February 1st, or or very soon thereafter. I would say it should be any time. And with that, we draw the sun, which is success and achievement. So again, yes, I would say that you'll get it on that time schedule. Now, Kurthwer in the chat is talking about a deck called the Dark Grimoire deck, and that they enjoy it, but others have found it a bit off-putting. And you know, that's kind of the thing. There's something for every taste. There's an H.H. Geiger deck out there somewhere. I think I remember seeing it, but it's kind of if you're familiar with Geiger's work, you can pretty much imagine what it is. But there's an H.H. Geiger deck. There's the famous Dolly deck, which I think is the most expensive non-historical tarot. I mean, obviously, if you were to buy a Renaissance tarot, it would probably cost you more. But for buying new, I believe the Dolly deck is head and shoulders above all the others in price. But that has to do with Dolly's reputation and the fact it comes with this gigantic book. And I can only imagine trying to follow the symbolism in a Dolly deck.
It just hit me. I would love to see an Escher deck.
Mm-hmm. It's an amazing, an amazing continuum of possibilities. We want to say hello to Brian in the chat room.
Hi, Brian.
And Unfold Trippy has a question in the chat room, which I believe I would understand to be that they are meeting with their boyfriend tomorrow and want to know how it's going to go. And hello to Diane in the chat room.
Hi, Diane.
So I'm going to shuffle for a moment and then draw a card for Unfold Trippy. Okay. Not to be confused with Trippy the Wizard. So we're drawing a card for the meeting between Sonia and Esteban. Our first card is the Eight of Wands. And although the Eight of Wands picture does not look terribly friendly, that is not necessarily the meaning of the card. It does mean things will go fast. And I'm going to draw a card with it. The Three of Wands is actually a very positive card. And I would take the Three of Wands to be celebration and achievement. So I would say this meeting will go well, but quickly. And I'm going to draw one more. And the King of Swords represents judgment.
Oh.
And I would assume this is for Sonia, because I believe she's the one asking. But use your good judgment in how you deal with this meeting. Listen to your heart, but do not let your heart overrule your head, and everything will be good. But the King of Swords is definitely about the heart and not overruling the head. And one more. Seven of Swords, which says to me that from this situation, you can have what you want, but it is going to take focus and effort on your part. It's not just going to fall into place. It will need to be massaged into place, for want of a better way to put it. And now your turn.
Well, I have drawn the Queen of Wands, which I believe is representing Trippy in this case. I have the Prince of Pentacles, which I believe to represent her boyfriend. I have the Chariot, which represents motion, but you are going to have to guide this motion in the direction that you want it to go. And I will point out that the queen outranks the prince. So you are in control of the situation and you can guide it the way you wish it to go at this point. And I apologize, I'm being harassed by a dog.
Hello, Ella. Ella's a very sweet dog.
She is, and playful.
And Brian would like a poll from each of us about the outcome of a work project that is being difficult.
And Hella says to tell you hello, Brian. Oh, we have a jump. I got 3 jumpers.
Oh boy.
All right. So our first jumper is the 8 of Cups. So you are surrounded by options right now, and maybe you're not sure about what to choose. I've got the Prince of Wands. You are welcome, Trippy. And this represents you in this situation. You are in control of your work. And finally, we've got the 7 of Cups, which, I could let bleed over into what I know about your personal life, but we'll leave that out. Although, congratulations to you and your fiance. But overall, I think, yes, control and options and follow your heart is what I'm going to say with this card. Don't overthink it. If you've got a gut feeling, go with your gut.
And let me draw a few.
You're
The first
welcome,
one I have
Brian.
drawn.
Oh, he thanked
5
me.
of Swords. And the 5 of Swords is feeling oppressed by a situation, which obviously I would assume is why it's being asked about, but that it's perhaps not going as would be desired. You can see a little house burning in the picture. So you may feel like the house is on fire. But it isn't necessarily as it seems. We're going to draw another card to go with that, which is Strength. And Strength says, yeah, there's all this angst around it, but there's more than enough ability to deal with it, more than enough strength. But you may need the strength, but it's there. And then for the third card, the 3 of Coins, which is a card of mastery of craft, a card of achievement, a card of establishment. So what I would say is that, yeah, you're going to feel the process of doing it, but it will come out well. And you will need to use your strength to get it. And I'm going to draw one last card. Well, actually, I'm drawing 2 because they came together. We have the 7 of Wands and the Princess of Pentacles. And the Princess of Pentacles, to me, is a situation where everything is in readiness, but hasn't moved forward yet. Either the person is holding back or the situation is holding back. And the 7 of Wands has a very similar message. I'm going to say victory after hard work, but you're in the hard work phase. So it may not move as fast as you would like it to move, but when it does move, it looks like it will move just fine. So there you go. And what the heck, I'll draw one more because why not? And the one I've drawn, the Four of Swords, basically says what I just said. A little bit of time before resolution. Most excellent.
You are
Brian,
welcome, Brian. Have a good night.
and thank you, Brian. And I'm glad that that everything looks good. And Diane would like to know, things are somewhat overwhelming in their life at this time, and they want to know if things will settle soon.
Got a jumper. Woo! All right. So the jumper was the Queen of Cups.
That's a good one.
So that's good. Next, we have the Hierophant. And finally, we have the Wheel of Fortune. So things are in flux right now. They definitely are, and that's the Wheel of Fortune. Given the Queen of Cups representing a woman in control of herself, and the Hierophant representing higher spiritual powers, I'm going to say that what you are feeling is necessary growth right now. And I'll pull one more card, and we get the Ten of Lamps. Lamps is the suit of spirit in this deck. So with it being the 10, you're going to find your path here. It's coming to you. You need to be open to it. And bear in mind, everything that seems overwhelming right now is part of the process. There's something here you need to learn and grow through. So be open to it.
Now I will draw a couple. The first card I've drawn is the Ten of Swords, which says that the current situation will soon pass over. So my first answer to Diane is that for her main question, will things settle soon? I think the answer is yes. Second card, Ace of Cups, happiness. Once they've settled, it will be a good, happy thing. And Past, which is a card that is in the Tarot of Hecate, but not a normal tarot deck. And it says that in dealing with this situation, Diane should assess the present in light of the past and look for the sources of things and look under the surface. And you can see the woman in the drawing is looking into a lake, and she's seeing her reflection as a younger woman. But that idea of looking at the water, the surface reflects back what's in your mind, but underneath it's a whole other world. So you want to go past your conscious mind into your spirit, and that will tell you what you need to know for this to settle. And one last card. I've drawn the Four of Coins, and the Four of Coins is blockage. So what I would say is that you'll find that what you're doing is you're working through blockages, and it should be quite freeing when you move through them, and it looks like it will come quickly. And so that's what I would say.
And hello to Soap or Soft.
Yes.
And Diana.
And do we have
I
any
have
other
a
questions?
question for
Oh,
you since we don't have anything else in the chat. I know
certainly.
you said your mother taught you to read
Yes.
tarot. So was she a kind of by the book, this is what this card means person, or a more of a follow your intuition, ask a question and see what the cards say to you?
I would have to say that she was more one who went by the denotation of the cards, what they were said to mean. And I tend actually to do that even now a lot. Not universally, because I mean, I got both attitudes, but in terms of interpreting the cards, it tended to follow pretty precisely what the quote traditional meanings were. The deck I learned from was a Rider-Waite clone. Um, so again, the use of the term traditional is provisional there, because it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really all that traditional, but um, I have tended to go by the stated meaning more often than not, unless I have a feeling to the contrary. And but I believe in both reading styles. I know some people work entirely intuitively, and if that's what you're doing, you can do a perfectly good reading that way. And then there are people like me who will tend to stick with the intellectual meaning of the card. And that will also give a good reading. And what's really interesting is to see these two different approaches used side by side and come up with the same answers. And they will.
Yes,
It's
they
interesting.
will.
When I was doing the vlog, Reverend Don's vlog, I had a lot of questions about tarot reading and being a professional reader, like how do you handle a drunk client? Or should you read for an intoxicated client? Or what happens if you do?
Why
Um,
not?
I think it depends in part on the reader. One of the things that may happen is you may pick it up from them. Um, but it depends where you're at. If you're a party reader, or if you're reading at a nightclub, of course people are going to be intoxicated. I remember
Yes.
once reading at the Limelight in Chicago, and some of those people were so drunk that I was sitting there getting a headache just from reading for them, and it was not my head. It was not a psychic type of headache. Um,
You getting drunk from the fumes, huh?
yeah, you can do that. You can totally do that.
Oh,
Um,
oh, yes. I used to work drive-through window on the only place open all night in town.
oh boy. Of course, what you have to do is you then have, when they're gone, you have to cleanse that energy. And
Mm-hmm.
usually that will be enough. But when you're surrounded by it, it's a little
Yeah.
harder. Um, it's interesting, but I believe we've come to the end of our half hour. We've done a few readings for people. I hope they're pleased. It was enjoyable. Do you have any last thoughts, Mary?
This has been fun. I've enjoyed the readings, enjoyed discussing tarot with you.
And I believe we'll be back to do the same thing next Thursday.
We certainly will be.
Yay! And so let us close with our accustomed prayer. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we ask you to help us to have clarity in our lives, to see clearly the signs and portents that are placed before us, and to read accurately the messages we receive from you, beloved ones. Help us to know the best ways to move forward, and help us to listen to our own inner guidance. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love and respect, and may you blessed be. And may you blessed be as well. Until next time.
Blessed be.